So, I began to teach geoeconomics and interrelationship between geoeconomics and geopolitics. And this occasion is made me think, why don't I launch a kind of continuous discussion on geopolitical and geoeconomic events on the YouTube. I already reading a lot, and I thought how to make my ideas public. So I decided to do this through YouTube. What I have to tell about myself, two things is really, one is that I was born in a socialist country in Hungary. I'm living now in Spain. And I'm definitely a pro-market guy. I know socialism doesn't work, and too much state role is detrimental. Really, I was influenced much by Karl Menger, who was one of the founding fathers of modern subjective economics, and he created an economic system which would work even without state to ensure the wealth of nation, how Adam Smith imagined in 1776. You don't need really state to be good and to be able to achieve what you want. The market, in principle, could provide everything, but we have the state. So we always have a kind of in-between relationship, and we are living in an interrelated relationship between economics and politics. And what I want to do in this YouTube series, how to combine the two visions, the economic and the political vision. As I mentioned earlier, as far as economics is concerned, my major concern is have as much free market as possible and as much state intervention, or as small intervention as possible. The more the state intervention, the more the possibility of unwanted consequences with tragic outcome. The second viewpoint, which is shaping my worldview or my vision, is that we need peace. We need cooperation. And we need to achieve peace and cooperation, we need to reach compromises. There is no worse thing than a war. Not only because the war, you don't know who will win the war, but any war, because any war means unjustified death. It means that generations are completely destroyed by the memory of unjustified death. So we have to do as much as possible to avoid war, violence, aggression. Even it is provoked by the aggression of other side, and we think that we are just defending ourselves, and to find a peaceful compromise which enables us to cooperate and work in the field of economics to provide goods which we deem necessary for our better life. So this is my two basic principles, and I hope I could show through this series of videos that if you have as much free economy as possible and the political wish and vision to reach compromise, we are better off than with a state-led economy or a politics which is intending to destroy others. So let's go. I begin with the biggest news, Trump. Trump in 2016 won the elections as a kind of wishful thinking. He was an experienced politician, and maybe he didn't know how to choose his team. And his presidency, his first presidency, is in one hand a lot of talk, but on the other hand, he followed the mainstream politics of the United States. His talk was to stop the forever war and to reach compromise with other countries in the world to avoid war. But in practice, what he did was just a continuation of the trend. During, for example, Ukraine, during Obama, there was the Maidan, but Obama didn't allow to give weapons to Ukraine. Trump, although sought to make a compromise with Putin, nonetheless he began to arm Ukraine, and during his presidency began the NATO integration and training of the Ukrainian army, which later on continued by Biden and led to the Ukrainian war. Trump, for example, in case of Israel, in one hand made the Abraham's Accord, which met with the wishes of many local people who wanted peace and cooperation. And Israel is a dynamic economic engine. So any country in the neighborhood of Israel is better to cooperate with Israel. But unfortunately, the Abraham's Accord had not arranged the problem of the Palestinian people living in Gaza and in the West Bank. So the Gaza Accord, to a certain extent, provoked, is not a good word, is conduced or may led to the October 7th event, because it was not enough broad to include all the problems and to solve a kind of way all the major issue of the Middle East. So now we have two major wars, because during the Biden presidency, all those conflicts just became bitter, because Biden was a very rigid leader, didn't make any compromise on any issues, and we have a war in Ukraine, we have a war in the Middle East, and we are close to have a war at Taiwan. Any of this conflict may lead to a world war anytime. So we are better off to seek compromises. And I have to read now Kissinger. In 2017, he made an interview at the Financial Times. I will attach this Financial Times below. And he said, I don't want to talk too much about Trump, because at some point I should do it in a more coherent way than this. But I think, he said, I think Trump may be one of those figures in history who appears from time to time to mark the end of an era and to force it to give up its old pretenses. It doesn't necessarily mean that he knows this or that he's considering any great alternative. It could just be an accident. I think with the comeback of Trump, we begin a new era. He's not anymore a bubbling idea. He's not anymore a wishful thinking. Then he chooses people who think completely the contrary what he wants to achieve. It is very clear this from his latest tweet, or X, his post on the X, and he said, I will not be inviting former Ambassador Nikki Haley or former Secretary of State Mike Pompeo to join to the Trump administration. So it's very clearly indicating he is clearing steer of the traditional hawkish neoconservative line of the Republican Party, and he seeks a new coherent policy field. This is very important change. This is the time when maybe Trump is not anymore an idea, a bubbling wish, but if he has a coherent vision based on his worst and bad experiences of his presidency and what Biden did bad, and now he wants a change in the US policy. And I think this is a very important change. And I hope that the US is seeking compromises and be able to impact on its allied countries who are following its lead to seek compromise, avoid war, and try to solve the problems in a negotiated way. This is the only one way we could achieve peace and end these terrible wars, which only would result in new wars, even worse and even bigger wars. Thanks for your attention.